Hello. I almost said, I don't know what I was going to say. Hello is actually the best way to go about this. Hey, this is Brent Leary. This is the first few good minutes of the week for me. Actually, that's a lie. I had some pretty good minutes yesterday, but these are really good minutes. These are the first recorded few good minutes. And I wasn't really expecting to do this one. I was just going to hang out, do my taxes and things like that. It is that time of year again. But when you see something that intrigues you, and then when you see something that intrigues you by somebody that you really do need to listen to, um, that's when you start saying, you know what, I better do this for a good minute. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. Now, all so far we're at April the 8th or 9th or something like that. And I've been to a number of industry events so far this year, maybe four or five. I think I've been to Vegas twice already, and there's a lot more Vegas trips to go. But anyway, I've been to Vegas a couple times. Literally just got back. Was it last week or the week before? Anyway, from Adobe Digital Summit. I've been to the Sage event, and I think there's this Engage, or maybe there's another Engage. But anyway, every event that I've been to so far this year has been, well, just like last year in sense of what we're talking about and what everybody's talking about, still on the generative AI. And at least this year so far, it feels different. Last year was all about, hey, we've got it, and a little song and dance, and yeah, we got you covered. Yeah. And then as the course of last year moved into this year, I noticed it was getting a little bit more substantive around the conversation of Gen AI. Like we're actually hearing some use cases. They're not just can you draw me a picture of a grape ape or something like that. It's actually like, business kind of stuff. So and then this year it's that momentum is picked up. I've been the Trailhead one for Salesforce, Adobe Summit. I mentioned Sage, I mentioned Zoho Day. So everybody's talking about it. And I know this is just the tip of the iceberg. Hearing about use cases, hearing about industry focused LLMs. We're about narrow language models. Last year was all about the LLMs. Now it's all about the narrow and small and domain language models. So it feels like there's some progression. But then I get this email that led me to this blog post. Are we still doing blog posts? We're doing some posts. It's posts with content, written content, and it just grabbed my attention. So wanted to read a little of this. There's a little bit more, but I'm just going to read this out loud. Expectations are high because this is all about, we're talking about Gen AI here. Expectations are high, but real world implementations are modest. Demos promise automated personal assistants that can book travel, schedule meetings, write promotional copy, and build compelling PowerPoint. Yeesh. Is that oxymoronic at this point? Can you actually build? I don't care if it's AI or humans. Can compelling PowerPoint models presentations actually be built at this point? I don't know. I'm just going to skip over that one. Reality brings us meeting transcriptions, call summaries, and glorified FAQs. And one more thing before we get into the meat. So keep all that in mind, because it has become increasingly clear to the person who said this that Gen AI will benefit from a gap year to discover more about its potential, achieve maturity, and gain acceptance in the real world. The real world. We're not talking about MTV, by the way. We're talking about the real world. So, these words, they're really interesting words just on the face, on the surface. It kind of makes sense to me a little bit. But that's not the reason why I'm reading this to you and spent a few minutes actually creating PowerPoint slides, now that I think about it. But here is the reason why it's really worth you guys paying attention. It's because the Botfather said it. he wrote about it. This is somebody, of course, Dan Miller, who is the lead analyst and founder for Opus Research, but I like to call him the Botfather because he's been the one that has led the charge for like the last couple of decades in this whole conversational commerce, conversational AI. And so when he's talking about Gen AI needs a gap year, it made me want to do this. Add
Whoa.
him here.
Wait. I'm still looking.
Oh, wait, the eclipse is it over yet?
It's over? Oh,
Oh.
damn. All right.
So welcome, Dan Miller. I call him the Botfather. You call him the lead analyst for Opus and founder of Opus Research. Call him a buddy of mine too. So Dan, thanks for taking time to join me.
Hey, I love the attention. Thank you.
Isn't that,
hey, the last time we did this, you helped me coin a concept that I've been working on before the gap year. That was the move from DIH to DIY. Because that's part of this deal is enterprise decision makers were like deer in headlights because all the vendors had their solutions there, and they're caught with this challenge of, how do I assimilate this? Where do I put it into my agent workflows? Do I point it at customers and stuff?
Yeah.
And I would argue we're in a gap year, but the gap you already put up there is that the vendors are showing all this great stuff. And then what's being used in the marketplace is transcription, summarization, and some insights, right?
Well, so that's like the interesting part of that gap year kind of concept. First of all, I'll be the first to admit I didn't get a chance to have a gap year. Like I went right from senior year right to freshman year. I would have been nice to get a little gap year. Did you get a gap year, by the way?
It turned out to be 6 months. So I graduated high school, was pretty convinced I knew everything, and that the education system was broken. And I started loading trucks at night for summer, and then summer became fall, and my friends were all in college, and I found out about a place called Hampshire College that let you design your own program of study. And I said, oh, that's what I need. So I would have made a gap year, but they said it was easier to get in during interterm rather than in the regular admission cycle. So I
So it was
dashed in
like a semi gap year. I mean, we can go with that.
I like that.
But before we get on with the actual subject at hand, I always thought the gap year is like you go abroad and you spend time just roaming the streets of Europe, Paris, London, Rome. I thought that's how you're supposed to spend the gap year or something like that.
Sounds so romantic. Yeah, would have been nice.
What doesn't sound romantic is this idea of a Gen AI gap year. So let me see. Is the gap year meant for the people that are excited about what they've heard about Gen AI, but they don't seem to be able to actually do anything beyond the write 300 words of poetry in the the vernacular of old Shakespeare, or something like that, or paint me a grape ape and an orange gorilla and bring them together, and that kind of stuff.
What
Because
does their offspring look like?
all right, we don't want generative AI to do that, but
right.
talk about who is the gap year for, and is there a real opportunity for this to happen?
So one thing I've learned in the 40 years I've been writing this stuff is leave some things ambiguous. All right. so I'll say the answer is both. But as I pictured Gen AI, doing this horrible thing of giving it a person, making it into a person, whatever they call that, anthropomorphism. As I anthropomorphized Gen AI and sort of took some of the truth, which is it's always training. We're talking about machine learning. It's a technology from the 60s. It just means that, nothing's fixed here. It's just going to keep learning. So, okay, lifetime learner here with an infinite lifespan. The fact that it's autocomplete on steroids. It doesn't think, it doesn't really learn. It just gets better at predicting what the next word is. Just give it some space, and have humans sort of recognize what its limitations are. So what you do so let's say it's a gap lifetime. Well, what the first line of this essay was. It was, like Billy Pilgrim, Gen AI is unstuck in time. And
First of all, I got to stop you right
just,
there. You assume that we all know who Billy Pilgrim is.
And that's not true either. I'll tell you, one of the things I thought that was, sometimes you just want to pepper your writing with something that sends somebody to a dictionary. Like if you're George Will, you just use words that nobody uses ever. And now we have Google you can look stuff up in. And so, I think, okay.
Or
We'll have
ChatGPT,
people
we
say,
could just ask who Billy Pilgrim is too.
Right. And Kurt Vonnegut's a hero of mine. Back when I was in school, everybody read this.
Is it like a
If I
Slaughterhouse
was
Five
quizzed,
thing? Is that a Slaughterhouse Five?
correct. Yeah, I
See,
think
I never read it. I've heard about it, but I
it's the first line. You don't even have to go that far into the book. But anyway, so here's this thing that's unstuck in time, that's always learning, but it's never going to be grounded in real life. And we have, as people, and whether we're decision makers in an enterprise who feel the pressure, I have to use AI, or I have to I have, my primary vendors are showing me all this great stuff. We have to, it's our role as people to ground these things in reality. And you brought up the domain specific language models. Two years ago, whenever ChatGPT made its presence, and everyone was going, oh, you as a company just have to start licensing OpenAI and use GPT, whatever. And I was saying, I don't know if that's really as important as coming up with big enough language models that are relevant to your use cases. I mean, it just sort of seems so. Take for granted that in some period of time, let's call it a gap year, these large language models are going to go and keep on learning. An offshoot of them is going to become sort of big enough for domain specific language models that are relevant to your brand, your use cases, your industry. And then the companies you want to deal with that are the solution providers for you are going to address sort of the known issues of successful implementations of LLM informed solutions. And that'll have code words like guardrails around the responses. It's going to be around how you curate, or curate the input, which is sort of define what data or knowledge you want to inform the things with, and then sort of the processes in between, whether it's RAG or what have you, that at some point in time, you're going to have the confidence to use these things for customer facing resources. And the reason I wanted to do this, I'll take a breath in a second, was because I was sensing there's a lot of disinformation or misinformation around what's out there. And expectations are so high that there's a whole school of analysts right now that are saying, hey, we're heading to an AI winter. These things are not living up to our expectations. Therefore, we're never going to bring them into the critical path between me and my customers or my brand and what have you. And I just think it's time, stop, take a breath, call it a gap year, call it what you want, but let's bring expectations in line with the capabilities, and also define what we need to do to make this stuff work.
Is it a gap year across functions? Because it seems like from a marketing and a content creation, like just pure content creation, not things that and will go into an assistant for helping somebody, but just from a
Yeah,
pure content creation. We're seeing open AI roll out Sora, so they're starting to get into the video creation stuff.
yeah,
I looked at that video. I think it's like a minute and 20 seconds or something. And all right, the only thing impressive about that video was we knew it was made by a computer. If you had just shown me that thing on its own, I would have been like, yeah, okay, sure. But when you say, "Oh, this is made by AI, generative AI," then it's like, "Oh, okay, well, that's interesting." But it has come a long way, and I'm sure 3 months from now we're going to be like, "Oh my God, it's really come." So from a content creation standpoint, I was at Adobe last summit a couple weeks ago. They roll out some really impressive stuff, and one of the things they said they alluded to is, yeah, right now, Firefly is mostly image generated. Yeah, but we're going to be rolling out uh, audio generation and video generation. They showed you things where you could take an image and have almost like an infinite number of other images created with the same structure or the same style. So you're seeing what seemed to be a lot of movement from last year to this year in certain aspects of this. But I agree
yeah.
with what you're saying when it comes to like meat and potatoes stuff, like really helping somebody, helping a customer get a better experience or get something they need right away. Yeah, I'm not seeing that yet.
Well, it's funny. So Adobe Firefly a year ago did sort of a day in the life of an event planner that showed all the touch points that person could have with a generative resource. So, you know, calendaring, building a look, um, uh, what and writing some copy. And so at each of those touch points with the human in control, incidentally,
Yep.
because everybody talks about human in the loop and stuff like that, but the ultimate endpoint is that you're going to want this to be your personal assistant, whatever it is. And whether it's Zoom with AI assistant in all your meetings, and you show up late and you say, "Oh, what I miss." You use your own words, you interact with the thing, you take for granted that it's gonna work its wonders. We used to not, Chat GPT's advent, biggest curse was stuff that happened under the covers for years was all of a sudden made conversational. So here's a conversational interface for some generative resource where before, to your point about Adobe showing something, you say, "Oh, whatever." It's unremarkable if it works. And if somebody and then when somebody says, "Oh, a machine did that," you go, "Yeah, right," or, "Oh, that makes it kind of interesting. I hope it gets better." But I mean, now now we're gonna have like a co-pilot slot on every piece of productivity software out there. And what I try to make the point in this essay is there's a school of skeptical analysts, journalists that are going to point out everything that goes wrong. The bot in New York City's um, small business support that says, "Oh yeah, you can throw a tenant out anytime." Just sort of make stuff up in response to questions, and
Right.
that is inevitable. Whereas if you just sort of step back and say, put think of somebody that's using it, um, and this is why this is how to spend the gap year is to assume that maybe it doesn't get better. It's always going to hallucinate. That's a that's a feature, not a bug.
Right.
We humans are always going to be necessary, either to curate the stuff we tell it, so to sort of reel it in. These are guardrails, or to look at the output and say, I mean, that's what early machine learning was. The machine responds with something, and then people would say, well, about dog, not dog, with image recognition. Some of the early
Oh my gosh.
machine learning stuff was looking at pictures and deciding whether it was a dog or not, and it would say yes or no, and then a person would have to say, no, that was
Oh,
that was a
and
manhole cover.
we're still seeing like some of these, AIs. They're still having a very tough time recognizing black folks. I mean,
Oh man, yeah, and 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 it was a stop the world moment, and rightfully so. um, and you still go on to Gemini and say, actually, I wanted Gemini to make the picture. I said, draw me a picture of a anthropomorphized Gen AI on a gap year. And I got the standard responses from Gemini these days is we're not able to render humans right now. We hope to be able to do that. So I mean, this is a give and take we're going to have. We're in the gap year. We're
yeah,
basically sorting out, what limitations do you put on a priori? Hey, don't even bother. What do you put on? Hey, I just need a picture. It's like, we're not there.
What about what role does human laziness play in this? And can you can a gap year cure that? Because a lot of times we're using these tools and they're not supposed to be used as a complete 100% replacement. They're really supposed to be complementary. And so when it spits out something, you're not supposed to just cut and paste and use it as
Right.
is without really checking it out. But let's face it, there was a survey that we did last week on the Serum Players where I think over 1,000 marketers were surveyed, asking them what percentage of their content is 100% generated by AI. So you had your old fashioned way of generating, like just human, a mixture of a human working with AI, and then you had pure AI. It was over 60% said it was pure AI. To me, that's kind of scary since we're still early on.
Yeah.
and and I think
No.
what we're seeing is, maybe, the gap year is more for the humans to really spend some time and effort in figuring out the best way to use it, not just trying to throw stuff that we don't like doing, throw it at that so that we don't have to look at it anymore. Because that ain't working.
Yeah. I'm just surprised that it's not 80%. I think Pareto always bears out. There's always an 80-20 rule for these things.
Right. So
80% of it's probably okay to just pass through, and there's no match between the 80% they send through and the 80% that's accurate. So that's a mess. But what I was saying. So my my wife was a straight A student, uh, through college, through graduate school, all these things, and she always said it wasn't because she was smart, it was because she was lazy. And I see, I'm getting back to your question about laziness, but um, I mean, she, you know, I, I don't want to defend laziness, and I don't think it's exactly lazy, to craft a prompt and just take whole, um, take as whole cloth the response and hit publish. I don't think it's smart, but
let
so I'll
me
come up
kind
with
of
a four-shell table of sort of industrious, lazy, smart, and stupid,
well,
and I'd rather be.
let me throw a little wrinkle in that. Maybe it's not just pure laziness. Maybe it's
Right.
uh, a feeling that they have to do certain things. They have to put out certain a number of products. They have to put out a certain number of pieces of content, and it becomes they feel like I have to use this in order to hit these kind of unrealistic milestones, and they keep getting harder and harder. So you have to use this, and because of that, maybe things are getting lost in the scuffle.
Yeah, I mean, but that's independent of what's going on with Gen AI. Because I was sort of thinking about it in the context, and I'll bring my wife up again. She worked at Moody's Investor Service. She's I'm a technology analyst. She was a securities analyst,
Nice.
and it's a kind of industry where you come up with a grade. You evaluate some sort of issue by some well-defined criteria, and you come up with a score, and you write a narrative about the score. And talk about something that an algorithm, talk about a process that would benefit from an algorithm, and what kept humans in the loop was there a personal reputation. It's like, she had, specific, she was municipal finance, so it was cities or public agencies that issued bonds, and needed a score and needed a description of that. And it's something that I bring up because as the parent company came under scrutiny for, hey, how did you get those ratings? Aren't you taking money from the issuers to then return a rating? Blah, blah, blah. They had to become very formulaic in what they were going to permit the analysts to do, meaning that the individuals who were creative, intelligent, wrote great narratives, could defend their scores, had to go through a rote process along. It's almost like redundant, RPA sort of things, because they'd rather you do it programmatically because it's defensible than to sort of take it down some avenue that you actually applied your intellect to come up with these things. So to answer your question about laziness and what we're talking about here, I think there's going to be a category of work product that was the product of some creativity. And I don't think of generative resources as being particularly creative, and they do seem totally incapable of critical thinking. So it's going to be a different balance between these the tools we use, and us. And there's a penalty for being lazy, because think of the lawyer that put a brief in front of a judge and hadn't bothered to check whether the thing had made up the cases it was citing. I mean, you'll learn pretty quickly that the lazy approach without critical thinking is a fail.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this: since the concept of the gap year, you go away, you explore, you experience things, you hopefully you grow in the course
Yeah.
of that gap year. So how should the gap year be spent? Where should the technology vendors spend their time? Where should the company practitioners and executives spend their time? Should they meet up in the middle somewhere? What about the technology partners? Like, for example, one of the interesting company partnerships, at least from my perspective, is Microsoft and Adobe. They've been very deeply partnered for years. They announced that they're integrating the Adobe Assistant that they announced at the summit with Microsoft Copilot. So you're going to see hopefully some cross, not only tech but data integration, cross Copilot integration, where you can ask something over here on the Adobe side that has a connection to stuff going on over on the Microsoft Copilot side, and they'll work together. Do we need the gap year to have a certain focus on the partnerships between the vendors? Do the vendors need to, each of them need to go off and try to figure out what they should do? And what about the actual companies and the executives at these companies and brands? What do they work with them, or do they go off somewhere with the that what do they call those retreats and do something on
Yeah,
their own?
but
What is
yeah,
a gap year?
a
What is
kumbaya.
yeah, what does a really good gap year from
How
the
does it
general AI
end?
perspective, how does it look? What
Yeah.
happens?
Not general AI. I mean, that's around
Generative
generative
AI.
AI. Um, so yeah, as long as we're anthropomorphizing. So the ideal thing is, give, and I'll project it as a bot. Give these bots some space, and you know, even though Pareto will prevail. Like 80% of stuff may turn out to be garbage or just a product of just malicious whatever. I mean, whatever happened to Tay? Or I mean, there's going to be sort of a gravity. At the end of my essay, I said, okay, there's proponents and there's skeptics, and so figure out who you are as a person, and if you're a proponent, then you monitor pretty closely a couple things. One is, how the developers of different models are packaging them so that that you can bring you hey, bring your own LM, bring your own language model is a very useful thing to think about. So to funnel into sort of your observation, hey, will these all interact? Uh, Keep yourself as a person educated in how you might benefit from the fact that yes, they're Zoom calls it like a hybrid approach or a federated approach, and assume there's going to be a federated approach where these things get smarter together, where there are domain specific flavors of them that are going to keep getting smarter. That's the gap year. They're getting their world experience. They're getting all that sort of thing. Assume that they do talk to each other. What always looked interesting to me, back when this was conversational AI, not generative AI, that there were different vendors that were saying, oh, we got a bot for that. So, it would be like a bot that answers the phone, a bot that, figures out what your intent is. It then knows what, that, hey, there's another bot that can do this better. That was becoming, or is becoming, because none of this is in the past. This is in the gap year. Anticipate that we humans are the friction that keeps sort of the positive form of generative AI from succeeding at this point. We are putting the limits on what it is able to do. We have identified the fact that, hey, it's good at transcribing and deriving insights, still needs attention and always will, to sort of write the sort of thing that I want to represent my company. And that's not going to go away. I don't know if I answered your question. The kumbaya moment won't be sort of black and white, like, oh, the prodigal son returns or anything like that. This thing's going to wander off in the wilderness, and every once in a while you'll have a touch point. You'll say, hey, is it soup yet? Can I try it here? How, does it need some more spice? Wow, how many metaphors can I bring up in a single show?
No, it should wander because it's still taking data from us, and man, we
Yeah,
wander all over the place. We don't know exactly, how to get from point A to point B, because a lot of times we're going zigzagging and going backwards. We're not going straight like it
yeah,
would logically seem would be the way to go. So it kind of makes sense that we're kind of in the predicament we're in right now with this stuff.
yeah,
Like even the AI, the data scientists, the AI scientists are saying, look, don't look at me. I don't know exactly where this thing is going. So when you hear that from them, I mean, come on,
yeah,
you got to have a little bit of a grain of salt with how you use this. And it feels like it feels like it's still damn the torpedoes. The excitement level has trumped the caution level in a lot of ways, and maybe that's why these expectations are a little bit out of sync, so to speak. And I don't know, it's going to be even from the enterprise perspective, you're feeling the maybe it's a gravitational pull towards this, but it's maybe still focused in a couple of areas, not a widespread yet. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe there's still an opportunity to, to kind of hold off a little bit before taking a full launch. I mean, do you see companies actually taking an approach to maybe we need to take a little step back before going full bore, or are they feeling like I'm seeing? It feels like they feel like if we wait too long, we're going to miss out on the gold rush. So we need to be right there with everybody else.
That's not a yes or no. It's sort of, it depends on the company, and if the past can be prologue, there are AI teams just like there were digital transformation teams, and there are AI sandboxes just like there were sandboxes as you develop whatever the precursor things were, and there'll be A/B testing. There'll be a lot of stuff. In this case, the decision making of late has kind of moved from the departmental level. So if you look at what happened with bots, there was one on your mobile. So the mobile team developed a mobile bot that did it. And then there was the one that started out as your FAQ bot on your website. And there was, those were the two principal ones. But you ended up with too many initiatives that, if it was, and these were using machine learning, these were using conversational AI, this was using, the pre-generative stuff. So, and the way those got evaluated is, it was in little containerized departmental ways. And then there was a steering committee, and then into the steering committee came legal and the IT department and finance. So we have a set of criteria from different places that put constraints on where you're going to see this crop up. But you also have a new set of things that are important, like, hey, let's not end up where we ended up with bots, with generative AI. We'd like to sort of containerize it, have sort of a single language, single set of things feeding a single language model. So there's an element of what's going on in the enterprise is trying to correct past mistakes, and they have an opportunity here because it is more of a horizontal technology. The idea, and it sucks in a lot of the old concerns. Is there a central data repository, a single source of truth? None of that goes away. You just have a generative AI veneer on the front end. So when it comes back from its wanderings, there's places to ground it, and there's different movements within the enterprise that are going to say, hey, it's got to conform to this, and blah 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 blah. Better not be out of compliance, and so we have a better checklist than we had before, and that's how we're spending our gap year.
Oh, okay. So you are taking a gap year
for sure.
No, that's
I mean, it's kind of like quiet quitting. I mean, it's going on. Nobody's going to say they're not gung-ho about adopting this stuff, and no vendor is going to say, hey, no, we're not going forward with this. But then my point was, yeah, but look at all the great demos that are out there, and we're doing the Opus Research Conversational AI Awards, and that was my throwdown. It's like, I don't want to see any more bots that are hard-coded and say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I want to see evidence that we're moving something that is a little more, I don't know what the word is, but robust or what, and when it fails, it doesn't fail in a predictable way. I don't know what the thing is,
You know what
but
though?
right.
I'm so it's so interesting that you say that because last week Amazon came out and they're shutting down
The
those
self
ghost
checkout.
stores where where you could
Yeah,
just walk out of the store and it'll check you out. And part of it, we find out that we thought it was all technology driven. What was going on apparently was they had like a couple of thousand or 1,000 people in India having the ability to see what's going on in each store because they all have webcams, and they were somehow integral to figuring out who's walking out with what and then charging. We thought it was all technology driven, and we
yeah.
find out it was actually not. So I understand what you're saying here because you don't want the smoke and mirrors or you don't want the hard coded. You want this to be what the promise is.
Right. But it will start out because this is what we learned with speech enablement and transcription is that like the world got preoccupied with accuracy and they said, okay, we can be 99% accurate, but we're shipping everything out to India for somebody to transcribe it. And in the longer run, we will automate part of this. So, but that was the whole, I mean, nothing really changes. Garbage in, garbage out will remain true. You figure out how to operationalize, and then you automate your operations. That doesn't go away. It's just, I swear, the thing that's different is that processes are much faster, and you can do stuff. I mean, these things are able to do things that they were not able to do 3 months ago. So
Right.
the refresh cycle for the technology is just faster than I've ever seen. So you move from sort of saying, oh, here's defining the process to automating the process to uh, uh, AI infusing the process in a much shorter period of time. But you do sort of start with humans, and one of my points is, and you're never going to drive humans out of this. So so spend some of the gap year figuring out two things. Well, figuring out what has a positive ROI, because the reason things landed on transcription and call summarization in the contact center and that sort of stuff is that had a positive ROI that you could do without exercising too much of the capabilities. So now you want to spend time in the gap year. So first of all, understanding what your costs are today with the current prices for tokens, with the language models and all that, and the reduction of human, some automation, and then project what the reduction of human input is. But that never goes to zero. We humans will have a slightly changed role, but we have a lot of roles in there, and I still think there'll be a positive ROI.
I hope so. I think so too. There's so much promise, and you would hate to see the real positives not come to fruition because of the negatives or the things that have to be worked out in order for all this potential to be reached. So, we're I almost don't want to ask you, but I gotta ask you, where are we going to be a year from now with this? Where do we think if we get I don't know if we're going to get the full gap year in. Maybe it's like the semi gap year. I don't know. There's some time to think and really not just go completely into reactionary mode, but to really
Yeah.
contemplate, think, collaborate. You know, what's going to happen if we get at least of some of that gap year time to do some of the things that you talk about.
Yeah. So year from now, there'll probably be some unpredicted use cases that come out, just the way like call summarization did. But I think in particular verticals that, everybody said, oh, these things aren't going, these aren't going to use AI, these aren't going to the cloud. I'm thinking financial services, healthcare, retail. There's going to be use cases that focus on the day of the life of a customer, the day in the life of the employee. And we're already seeing, like, a bot that can help the scheduling of a contact center agent, do a bunch of, these things are going to prove that they can do things on your behalf that make your life simpler. This addresses your laziness thing. Is solution providers are going to reinforce the classics. How you reduce the effort, how you reduce customer effort, how you promote employee happiness. I used to think that was funny, but I'm just thinking about all the ways that, and we've seen this in HR. So on a industry by industry basis or function by function basis, you're going to find specific areas, like in HR, the onboarding. Well, the HR people are finding the interview. They're standardizing around interview. I talked to somebody yesterday who said, "You're going to get a kick out of this. I'm interviewing for a job, and I was 2 days in when I realized that the person I was interacting with was an AI." and
Wow.
so so part of my premise is that there'll be fundamental changes that have happened that are so good we're not really aware of it unless we really seek it out. So it's going to be, like quiet quitting. There's like quiet automating or quiet AIing.
Quiet
And
automating. You just came up with another one, Dan. Quiet automating. I like that.
and AI is a big part of that. And right, so there's just fundamentally different workflows, well, similar workflows in the last ones, but they're accelerated by AI, and it's going to be done in subtle ways that we don't really care.
I think that has a really great opportunity and potential to come through, because there are certain things you don't mind not really knowing if it's automated or not. I just, as long as it's easy and does what I needed to do, I could care less. And of course, there are
Yeah,
other things that, like, I really hope there's a human here.
yeah,
Um, I there's so many things, so many ways to go with a lot of this stuff, and I think we would benefit from some step back, because to a certain extent it does feel like we're a little out of control with some of this stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it wouldn't hurt to just take a little step back. At least I don't think it would hurt. I don't know if the technology will take a step back. That's the one problem or
No,
challenge.
yeah, it's going to be. You don't. Well, you can't slow the progress of technology,
Yeah.
but we can harness it, and it's a classic. Machines are not going to be our overlords, or if they are, boy, did we make that. That's
Oh,
our own dumb fault.
so you're not going with the Elon Musk AI will take over in what, by 2025 or something like
Oh,
that?
I thought that was Mark Andreessen. Yeah, whatever the crossover point. Yeah. The singularity should work in our favor there.
Dan, as always, it's a pleasure whenever we get a chance to talk, and
Yeah,
this was definitely no exception to that. I'm looking forward to seeing how things play out. Definitely looking forward to seeing you at a conference sometime soon,
yeah,
because I'm sure we'll be at one together. And then
absolutely.
we could do something face to face there too, because that's always fun.
That'll be good. All
All right.
right. Well,
So
thanks.
thanks to Dan. Thanks to everybody out there. Check this out. I will see you Thursday. I had to think what day it is for our CRM players. I don't even know who's our guest, but we'll figure it out. In the meantime, thanks again. See you soon.